You know, today we're going to be working with a data set from Innocent Drinks. So if you guys haven't heard of Innocent Drinks, they are a smoothie company. They're quite famous here in the UK, especially for their social media marketing. I think they're sort of industry standard. They've got a really funny tone. They manage to keep people engaged. And as we're going to see, they kind of tweet about some interesting and unrelated topics. So what we're going to do today is collect a data set of tweets from Innocent Drinks and then kind of understand what's working really well for those guys and what do they actually tweet about.
Okay, great. Do you guys have, like Sergio, do you have Innocent Drinks in Spain?
I think we have, but I'm not a customer.
Oh yeah, I've never like. I love you as well. I've never seen them in the supermarket or anything like that. But I've equally never gone looking for them.
I'm quite surprised about that, to be fair. You know, they're really big over here. You get them in meal deals, sort of in Tesco's and Sainsbury's. I think people say it's one of the best drinks you can get in the meal deal, but yeah, maybe that's just social media marketing.
The most expensive that you get.
Right, Paul, should I start the analysis, start collecting some data?
Yeah, let's get started with Tractor maybe. Just how you got the data set would be good to get started.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for everybody that's just joined us. It's nice to see you here. And just if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. So this is the project that we're going to be creating. These are some of the variables that we're going to be collecting from Innocent Drinks, from the tweets that they've posted themselves. And I'm just going to move over here to show you how we're going to get this data set. So if you aren't familiar with Tractor, it's a program that we offer at Graphext for scraping data from social media platforms and other digital media outlets. So Google Search, Google News, Media Cloud News. We can use this to collect news stories and news URLs, which is really useful to analyze with Graphext as well. Facebook ads, and today we're obviously going to be focusing on Twitter. Twitter is a really, really good source of data for analysis, and it lets us, it's got a really friendly API that we can query in lots of different ways. And we've done a number of successful analysis with Twitter data here at Graphext. So to collect the tweets from Innocent, I don't need to enter anything into my search field. If I wanted to, I could enter something like Innocent, and I can use operators like or and in here to collect tweets that are going to mention Innocent and Drinks in the same tweet. But today we don't actually want to do that. That's going to query any kind of tweet. So that would be coming from any kind of user. Sorry, Paul?
Yeah, just to let people know, I think we've got, if you go to the question mark there, at the top, I believe that takes you to like a guide on how to like search on Tractor using Twitter queries and everything like that. Because if you were like me when I started Graphext, I had no idea how to do a Twitter query. So it's quite useful to have the language there.
Exactly. Exactly. It takes you straight to our docs article, which has videos on how all this works, and as well as the Twitter query language, which is a little bit confusing when you start if you haven't worked with a query language before, but it's actually really simple and it lets you do loads of different things. And you can collect quite a lot of powerful data just by using very, very simple queries as well. But that's all linked if you just use the question mark, like Paul said. Definitely. So today we are going to just use this from field, and it's very, very simple. Innocent's Twitter handle is Innocent. And we can also choose to collect specific kind of data starting at a certain date. So I'm just going to go all the way back and make sure this is going from 2016. And we can choose an until field as well. We can choose to include reply tweets, include retweets, and include quotes. But Innocent tend to post quite a lot, so I'm actually going to ignore that. Sometimes it can be quite useful to just focus your analysis. Including a lot of retweets can sometimes make the analysis kind of noisy. And if that looks good to me, that looks good to you, Paul?
Yep, looks good to me.
Fantastic. What I would do now is just press search, and that's going to start retrieving my tweets. So this is quite fast. It retrieves quite a lot of tweets per minute. I don't know exactly how many. It depends on the request that you're making, but it's quite easy just to stop the process of collecting the tweets, and I can either save it as a CSV that will save over 1,000 rows, or I can just click continue, and that's going to continue from the place that we left off. So I've already got the data set. Is that making sense to people? Is there any questions that we've got about Tractor as we go along? Just pop them in the chat.
Yeah, please do.
Otherwise,
it's quite a simple tool to use, but maybe if you've not used it before, you may have a few questions.
Definitely, it's something that I found really, really powerful when I first started working with it, because I thought, you know, we've got unlimited access almost to so much data that's published on these social media platforms, particularly for kind of marketing professionals, people that work in social media. It's really quite a good resource. Yeah. So what I would do now would be to save this as a CSV file. Graphext deals really well with CSV files. I can save that to my desktop. And I've actually already got the data loaded up, but we will just drag and drop the file into Graphext. So with the file loaded up in Graphext, we'd get something like this, tweets from Innocent. And you can see that I've gone all the way back and I've got 10,500 tweets here. And maybe it's worth, Paul, you want to walk us through some of the variables that we've got inside the data set here? What do we collect?
Yeah, of course. So it's quite easy. Essentially, every time you upload the data set, like Graphext will automatically cast for you each column there, each variable. So you can see if it's a Boolean, if it's a text column or whatever. And with that in mind, occasionally you want to have a little check to make sure everything's correct. You'll see like user description doesn't show up as green, so maybe you want to check it. If it shows up as red, I'm not able to see it exactly, so I'm not the best at reading this from the screen because you're sharing your screen and my eyesight's rubbish. But I think you can see like you've got user description there, user follow count. The main thing when you've scraped using Tractor is there's two text columns, and one of them is the user description, and the other one is just the text. It's called text, but that's the tweet. So every row is a tweet and the text is the tweet. So when we do, say, a topics analysis, a keywords analysis, we're generally going to be looking at the text column, whereas if we're looking at author bios, we're going to be looking at user description, user bio. And yeah, that's essentially it. Then you'd go on to select which type of social media analysis you're doing. So I would say that the majority of people are carrying out topics analysis, and that's I think got it there first. Now, if you look, there's a little light bulb in the corner of each of the sections, and that just means that the recipe is already created. Like the idea behind Graphext is that it's like a very easy entry but quite high ceiling. So even if you've got no idea what to do, you can now just click on topics. So Andy, if you could click on topics. Yeah. And you could now just hit next, and that would be it. You'd have a project that would impress people. Another option you've got, this is why I mean it's a little bit high ceiling, you could go into data enrichment. So if we want to enrich the data, we say like a sentiment analysis or emotion, detecting emotion text, we use NLP Hugging Face models. It will take a little bit longer to run, but I believe we're now using GPUs with that. Yeah. So it doesn't take very long at all, actually. But with a larger data set, it'll take a little bit longer. And with that, you can add these different layers to your analysis. So maybe we want to focus, Andy, your choice, maybe a text sentiment analysis or motion. Which one would you choose?
I think both, you know, and honestly, they are quite fast, particularly dealing with a data set of 10,000 rows. It's not going to take too much longer to actually execute these. And in the project today, we've got both sentiment analysis and emotion detection up and running. So I just want to show you guys how we quickly add those in. And it's worth mentioning as well that I personally really like to analyze sentiment and emotion whenever I'm running a kind of text analysis, because you never know what you might find. There's always interesting trends when it comes to predicting whether text is positive, negative, or neutral, or what kind of emotions depicted in it. It doesn't matter if you're analyzing customer reviews, if you're analyzing the tweets from a competitor, you can tell quite a lot just by using these classification models, which are really, really powerful and just so easy to set up. So the text variable, this is the sentiment analysis. I'm going to get rid of the extract date components enrichment, just to make it clearer for you guys. And you can see that we've only got 2 questions really here that we need to answer at the moment. So I'm going to use text as the variable that I want to analyze for sentiment. And that's the text of the tweet. And I'm going to do the same for emotion detection. And those are really 2 powerful ways of enriching the data. And then also another tab which you might want to configure. As Paul's already said, you don't have to configure this at all, but it's just worth checking the kind of things that we're going to be extracting from the text. So Graphext is going to set us up immediately with significant terms, mentions, hashtags, the length of the text, the length of the tweet, the keywords, the emojis. You know, I'm not going to change this default configuration because it works so well and gives us a lot of useful variables, and there's not too much in there. We could choose more, but there isn't too much in there that isn't useful, actually. We can always set the language of the tweet as well. So all of these tweets from Innocent are going to be in English. And it's quite easy to use a column to set the language of the tweet that you have. But Graphext can automatically infer that as well. It's not something you need to change. Paul, would there be anything else that's worth mentioning during the project setup?
So something I always do is I always add in the automatic insights. And my reason behind automatic insights is just it gives you a base to start your report. Like, it always makes it look like you know that that's how you should be formatting your report in the insights section. So I always throw in an automatic insight as well, just to have it there. And then even if I remove it, it's good to give you the structure that you're going to want to have.
Brilliant. So what I would do now is just click next and execute my project. So I'm not going to execute it just now because we've already got a project loaded up that's using exactly the same setup, and I will just bring that up now. So when you open the project, you're going to see something very, very similar to this. We have a lot of variables going on here. We already had a lot of variables inside the data set that we collected from Tractor, and we've just extracted loads of different information from the text itself. So it's a lot of really useful and powerful variables, but I think it can be a little bit overwhelming when you start to open a project. So I think one of the things that we want to run through today is what the key variables to look out for in any kind of social media project are, because there's 1 or 2 particularly that kind of really can direct the analysis in different directions. So something that I would like to look at immediately when I open a social media project is this clusters variable. And this is the topics that we have found inside the text. So during the execution of the project, Graphext has analyzed the semantic similarity, so the similarity between the words in all of the tweets from Innocent, and it's grouped them together. So that's quite a complicated thing to get your head around, but it's really, really powerful, because what we end up with is groups of tweets that essentially talk about similar things, talk about similar themes. And we can start to see here that these clusters are labeled with different things. So one of the most obvious ones, we can see there's a cluster about weather updates. And if I just bring up the node labels a little bit, I can maybe go into the graph and I can see, sure enough, there's tweets about weather updates here from Innocent. I check another one, windy out there tonight. So we can see that all these tweets that Innocent are rather strangely posting about the weather are grouped together. And then that kind of gives you an idea of what we're actually seeing in the project at large. So we have lots of different groups here of tweets that are kind of grouped together because they talk about similar themes. Paul, what would you do?
Different clusters? I see a lot about Great British Bake Off.
Yeah.
Is there any about smoothies?
There is. So it's strange enough that their third largest cluster, so the third most populous cluster, is all about smoothies. Should we have a look and see what's going on there?
Yeah, I feel like that should be the thing that'd be the number one.
That would make sense. I'm just going to bring up some more labels so that we can see some of these smoothies.
So maybe we're just focused, like doing an analysis. We see that, like, we want to see the tweets that are specific about smoothies.
Yeah.
My personal opinion would be then it'd be a good idea to do like an automatic segmentation of just that particular cluster. So we could see the fact, like we're now clustering their tweets about smoothies. Could be a good idea as well. So maybe we could show them just without even maybe doing the automatic segmentation, but just showing them how they could do that if they wanted to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we can do the automatic segmentation. That makes sense. So I've selected this group of tweets which are all about smoothies. You know, I'm just going to quickly check this kind of thing with some of the text variables in my project. So I'm just going to open the sidebar and look for things like nouns. Might be a good idea to start. And I can see that, yeah, sure enough, the word smoothie is the most populous noun in this cluster. I could also search for text, which is a variable containing all of the text that were in these tweets. And if I sort that by the selection, I can see that the ones at the top, super smoothie, smoothies by, free, kids, fruit, these are all stuff that you can, all words that you might imagine to be closely related with the idea of Innocent selling smoothies. So Paul was talking about making an automatic segmentation, and that means I'm going to take this group of smoothies, this cluster, and I'm going to make smaller clusters inside of it, just to kind of see what different topics the Innocent would be talking about smoothies. So first thing I have to do is make sure I've got the cluster selected. And then I will go to the top of my left sidebar. I'm going to click New Segmentation, and I'm going to click Automatic, and that's it. And I'm going to call this Smoothie Segmentation. I'm going to click OK. And that's given me, just take the color mapping off so we can read that a bit better. And that's given me a segment which is only containing 679 tweets, the same tweets that were in that cluster down here that we've just selected. And we can have a closer look at what kind of words are in this cluster. So what can we see, Paul?
Well, we can see some offers with half price, Tesco, things like that.
Yeah,
smoothie. It'd be interesting. At that point, maybe we can so break and join, because in these clusters maybe there are too many, and we can go too low to allow a lower number of clusters.
Yeah, join it to about 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sometimes, you know, we don't want this many smaller groups. You know, that this is something that doesn't just apply to social media analysis. We can segment loads of different things across Graphext. But I've got a lot of clusters here, and there's only 679 tweets. So something that I'm going to do now is to join these clusters together a bit more. And that's just going to mean that it's going to group it in a way that there's less groups, very simply. And I can save that here. That looks more reasonable. And we can see Plastic Recycle Week Council. That's quite a clear topic emerging there as well. Kids smoothies, and then obviously the main cluster that we see here is just general talk about smoothies, which isn't particularly surprising.
Maybe it's on that as well, just so that we see what it would look like on the graph.
Sorry, say that again. Color again.
Use color mapping.
Of course, yeah. And we can see that the grouping of tweets to by semantic similarity. So the grouping of similar tweets goes from a really zoomed out range where we have big clusters in the data set, but we can also really narrow in now and see really small groups and start to identify patterns. So say we were particularly interested in this tweet, we found that it was really successful for Innocent. We might be able to select the neighbors of this tweet, and that's going to give me an even smaller group of the exact tweets which are related to that tweet. Something I think is really powerful, that we can go from a really zoomed out range, zoomed out perspective on the data, right in to find exact matches with one tweet that we're interested in.
Yeah. And maybe we can show to detail section, and so how you can download or select any amount of tweets or any cluster if you want to download it and work with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So say you find a really important segment of tweets. For example, I'm interested in, it's strange actually, Innocent tend to tweet a lot about Eurovision. I think it's something we can see very quickly if I look at the retweets. we can see that these retweets, a lot of their tweets about Eurovision are very, very successful. I'll take another look at that in a moment. But as Sergio said, once we've made a selection, we can see in the details panel. So this data table is now showing us only tweets that are about Eurovision, for example. So one thing that I might want to do in the future is really narrow in on this analysis, build a completely different project just using this data set of only 464 tweets. So what I'll do now is just click here. I can either download it as an Excel file or a CSV, and I can use that in external platforms, or I can make a copy in the datasets panel. So if I click here, that's going to bring me back to a new window, which is going to then copy my dataset in its original space. And we can see that this new dataset with just the 464 tweets is being created in my team, and I can work that out. So something I quickly wanted to focus on, Paul, maybe you can help me out here, is looking at some of these key variables. I think one thing that's super important to a lot of people when we're analyzing social media data is the number of retweets, the number of favorites. What are the engagement metrics? What can we tell about Innocent Drinks? What are they doing well? So I'm going to look for the retweets variable, and maybe you could tell everybody a little bit about what we might want to do and what were the problems with this variable here.
So I always think that when it comes to, and this is the majority of social media analysis, there's so many outliers. So you can see that between 0 and maybe, I don't know, 500, or 0 and maybe 100, it's interesting. And then you've got all the way up to 4,000 something, maybe 5,000. But because it's so spread out, that doesn't give you an insight into how many. It just looks like everyone's getting on the 0 mark. So I would do a zoom in onto that.
Yeah.
You can show them how to zoom in, and I would just zoom in like 0 to 100, 0 to 150.
Yeah, definitely. So I will do exactly that. In fact, excuse me, that's my mouse being a bit funny. Click on this bar here. I've got 0 to 200. So we can see that 0 to 200 is 94% of the data set. You know, it doesn't make much sense to be analyzing these outliers. We could do that kind of analysis separately, but I can click on the more options menu bar and click zoom in. And that's going to create me another variable, which is much more useful, as we can see the number of retweets between 0 and 200. So we've got 94% of the data set selected here, and only missing the tweets that were outliers in the original variable.
Now so I'd look at it and try and get, right, what are the interesting tweets would be maybe between 100 and 200.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say that's quite successful for a brand's tweets.
Exactly. So one thing I want to quickly just do to see if there's anything interesting, I haven't actually looked at this, is just apply color mapping to that new retweets variable and just see, we can see here. Yeah. So this is quite interesting that we can see, as Paul said, we select 99 to 200, and we've got quite a bit more populace around this bottom right region of the graph. That might be something that we want to look more into in detail. But one of the things that I think is the most interesting when we have an insight like this, we've got probably the most interesting selection of tweets if we're looking at popularity engagement metrics. So you're going to bring up this sidebar again, and we want to find our significant variables. So what variables seem to be influenced by this? What patterns can we start to find in the data set between tweets that are in this really successful segment? So one thing that we can immediately do is Graphext is telling me the significant variables that are at play here. So retweets quartiles, that's not particularly interesting because we expect kind of retweets quartiles to be very, very correlated with this. But something that is interesting to me immediately here is hour. And this is just telling me, I'll zoom in case you can't tell it. So this significant variables always comes up when I have a selection active, and it's telling me what other variables in the project are affected by my selection. What are influential variables? Where might I find a pattern here? And it's telling me with the hour variable that I might find a pattern. So I zoom out again, and we can see the hour variable at the top of the screen here. What do you see there, Paul?
Well, I can see that I believe in the morning is when the tweets are most successful.
It looks like this blue bar is representing tweets inside our selection, and the grey one is representing tweets in the whole data set. So what we've got here is an over-representation of these successful tweets between 7 and you could probably say around 10 a.m. So it looks like a lot of Innocent's most successful tweets are coming out at that time.
That shows the people that like innocent drinks are like early morning people, smoothies, everything like that. Gets to know your audience a little bit. That if you're a beer company, I'd be interested to see where your likes come as a beer company or something like that.
It's true. It's true. And something we can do again here is to select this. So I can now select in the hour variable, and I can see, right, okay, well, is Paul right? Are these people that are just up and ready talking about smoothies at 9 a.m. in the morning? Or is there something else going on here? And I'm just conscious of the time, so I'm just going to finish it on this insight here. And I want to take a look back to where we were at the beginning, which is our clusters variable. So now we've found this really important segment of tweets. We can find what clusters are they in? What topics are these tweets about? And we can see that weather updates is overrepresented here. Clocks and calendar announcements. That's quite a strange thing to be appearing here, but it seems to be true. And then Christmas and more Christmas. So we get an immediate indication of the kind of topics that are most successful for Innocent Drinks. And we've only really spent 5 minutes, 10 minutes working with the project. I'm conscious of the time. I want to make sure that anybody has time to answer questions at the end. So maybe we can open up the floor. If you've got any questions, please feel free to add it to the chat. And Paul, I think, is there any other housekeeping that we need to attend to today?
Well, what I can do is I can send over, like we have an article and a kind of a more basic video to how to operate this exact data set, which is in the public data set. So if everybody's at least on the freemium version of Graphext, you have access to this data set, you have access to this project. It's on the public. Can you go to show them like how to get, some people don't know the public's there.
Definitely, yep. So if I go back to my home space in Glasgow, then in public, in my home space in Graphext, I have this public team here, and we've got all the data sets associated with the project. But the most interesting thing is the projects that we've been working with, and you can see right near the top, we've got this tweets from Innocent Drinks project, and I'm also going to post in the Graphext blog. Just so you guys can see how we might find the video. This is something that Paul and I worked on in the past. And you can see that we've recorded a video. So if you want to just quickly recap anything that we've covered today, you've also got a link to the project and to the data set there as well. And I'm just going to post this link into the chat so you guys have it. I think we've got a question in the chat. Karen is asking, do you recommend to clean the data? In which step of the process do you recommend to do it? The answer with social media analysis, particularly if you're collecting the data with Tractor, is no, you don't have to clean it. You saw today, right from collecting the data with Tractor to uploading it, there was no cleaning done. There was no pre-processing done. That's something that's taken care of Tractor. There really is no other steps to the process than that we haven't shown you in the class today.
Yeah. Also, like, hate to publicize the competition, but same with LexisNexis. If you're using LexisNexis and you upload Brandwatch, things like that, then you can upload directly with Brandwatch to Graphext without having to clean.
Yeah. Great. So if there's no other questions, I will draw the analysis session to a close. It's also just worth mentioning that we did record the session today. So we have, we'll probably be leaving that somewhere on the community for you guys to access. And of course, if you have any questions about the analysis today or anything else to do with Graphext, we've got Andy, Sergio, and Paul. I'm Andy, and you can just tag me in a post on the community and I'll see that and get back to you.